Now I'd like to call upon Adam Gopnik for his presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Malcolm, for those eloquent words. As you can see, I am doomed by nature to believe that small is aesthetically preferable. And I do believe that small is aesthetically preferable, but I don't believe that that's the distinctive feature of Canada. You know, in the 6 debates that my dear friend and much esteemed colleague Malcolm and I have had, we've always had a slightly playful element in deciding who would take which side. Not long ago in New York, Malcolm decided to shut down Princeton, Harvard, and Yale, and I struggled to keep them open. But in fact, he's a graduate of this institution, and I'm a graduate of McGill, and really, frankly, don't care whether they remain open or not. Each time in these debates, though our claims have been colored, certainly, by our convictions, they have not been entirely shaped by it, and we've both allowed the game of argument to sharpen our points and govern our ends. But not here today. I drew, after Malcolm claimed nation, I drew notion, and there's certainly a case to be made for a pure form of notionalism, it seems to me. If I were standing before an audience in my adopted country of the United States or my beloved second country of France, I hope that I would have the courage and the character to simply denounce nationalism of all kinds before them, those being 2 countries that suffer from an excess of that kind of national identity and a particular kind of pride. I hope before that audience I might be able to make the case for a pure kind of universalism and a very pure kind of cosmopolitanism, where we would simply assert that the individual and her rights and interests is much more important than those of any collectivity. But that's not an argument I want to make here today in Canada, in part because crazed undue chauvinism and self-praise is not really the problem here, but also because to make that argument would be to deny my connection to this place as a place. Because one of the things that I think we know is that the individual and his rights or her rights is an abstraction. We belong in reality to homes, communities, traditions, places, and without them, in a certain sense, we don't exist as individuals. Our journey to the perfect cosmopolitan city begins inevitably in a home. It may be a neighborhood within that city, but it begins somewhere rather than nowhere. And this is an idea that no one has articulated better, in fact, than that great Canadian philosopher, Charles Taylor. The idea that the collective is not merely tribal or vestigial, that without a common identity, we cannot have an adequate idea of ourselves as individuals. We cannot help but belong to a family, a town, a city, and in some abstract but real way, to a country. That country may be simply a countryside, a season, winter, sound of voice on the radio, a sport, an accent, a habit of absurd good humor and politeness, the choice of speaking 2 languages. But it is a country and a kind of horizontal connection to others in a room who know those codes as well. I live in New York within a cell of that kind of Canadianness, within a place of that kind of belonging. The CBC plays on internet radio all day and all night. I call and have a set of shared door jokes with my friend Bruce McCall. My wife, half Winnipeg Icelandic and half Winnipeg Jewish, coos and complains alternating moments all day long. My son, there's the Icelanders are laughing at the Jewish joke. My son has even come to me, living as we do with NHL Center Ice, so we can watch every single game of the Montreal Canadiens, who are my deepest connection of all to the idea of Canada. That's terrific. We were the 2 guys in Canadian sweaters behind the goal looking sad last night. And he has asked me the fundamental, unanswerable question, why do Canadians like Don Cherry? This place is my home. That is the cell to which I belong, no matter how far or how often I am away. But what strikes me when I hear my dear friend Malcolm's argument for Canada, for the small is beautiful Canada, is that the Canada he's describing is not any Canada that I know. In fact, what I think my friend Malcolm has done today, with his usual eloquence and precision, is made the best argument for the separation and independence of Quebec that I have ever heard. That is, he has made exactly the argument that I grew up hearing with less precision and less relevant data as a kid in Quebec. not only is small beautiful, but that the best little country in the world can be more successful than a big encumbered country. Exactly. That just because you belong to a small, narrowly defined nation doesn't mean you're not capable of playing a part way beyond your numbers, punching way beyond your weight in the world outside. Those are exactly the arguments that Quebecois who believe in the independence of Quebec make again and again for that independence. It's exactly the argument that I like to think of as the Slovenian argument. Slovenia is a remarkable little country that has all of the qualities that Malcolm is talking about. Iceland is a country that has many of the qualities that Malcolm is talking about. Canada is not a country that has many of the qualities Malcolm is talking about. It is not a mean, tough, independent, and unencumbered country. It is a nice, emollient, and thoroughly encumbered country. That is part of its nature. It is part of its DNA. When I walk down a street in Toronto, what do I see? Everywhere I look, I see signs in 2 languages, one of which almost no one in the city speaks or feels compelled to read. Why is that? Because Canadians are mean, tough, economical, and unencumbered? No. It is because Canadians are the most encumbered of people. They are encumbered by a history and by a commitment to make that history work in a civic manner, to turn this country into a model of how that cosmopolitan idea can exist within a single country in a way that makes them unique. That's the uniqueness of Canada, and that's the part of the Canadian ideal that I want to argue for today and convince you is the real essence and significance of Canada.